Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Matt Coffman. Matt is doing so much amazing work, so I'm excited to have him on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness Podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Matt Coffman. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Matt Coffman. And Matt is a health coach in Tampa, Florida, as well as host of the Integrative Thoughts Podcast. And I'm excited to have Matt on the show to share his story and how he's completely transformed his health and life. So, Matt, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah. And, before we get going with all the work that you're doing right now, Matt, let's start with your backstory. First off, where you're from, and just kind of walk us along your wellness journey so we fully understand how you've gotten to the point that you're at right now.
Yeah, if people were to look at me today, they would probably think that I kind of always had this health thing figured out, which is very, very far from the truth. I grew up in a poverty-stricken city, Flint, Michigan. Most people probably have heard about it, especially recently because of the crisis. But well before the crisis, it was always just filled with poverty, and nutrition's not really on the forefront of pretty much anyone's discussion in the city. I had no father, so no one to look up to as a role model for any form of nutrition or advice. My mom was a bartender. She was gone most nights. So for us, meals usually looked like ramen noodles. She would get fast food, French fries, any form of sugar, carbs that you could imagine that were cheap, honey buns and all the old stuff, now and laters from the corner store. That's basically what I lived on for most of my life. And as I got older, I was always active. I played sports. So I wasn't just like obese and very, very overweight, but I always carried some weight, which actually helped me because I was pretty big into football. So you kind of are almost allowed to have some weight. And as I got older and I quit playing sports and I got into college, I realized very quickly how much that physical activity had leveraged me in the past, because I went to my first semester of college and I gained like 30 pounds almost instantly, basically because I wasn't playing sports anymore, And so I realized quickly that I had to figure something out with my diet. And this is where I, started doing small things, cutting out soda, almost like what every typical American does, really, really cut calories that can have lots of other backlashes with it. But at the time, it was just all about looking better and not being, overweight. So probably throughout my 20s, I just ran with that sort of yo-yo diet. I would crash diet, gain 30 pounds back, crash diet, gain 30 pounds back, and would always just struggle to really, really maintain a diet. And I found myself wondering, how could I get this under control? And, I tried a few bodybuilding diets where you kind of carry around all the food and you meal prep. And that tended to work to help me look good, but I really didn't feel that great. Also, in my 20s, I was battling plenty of different addictions, alcohol, drugs, lots of, medical marijuana was legal in Michigan. So lots of smoking and just all around partying that really, really kept throwing my diet off track as well. As I kept going on and on, everything was just intertwined. The sugar addiction from the alcohol led to me eating sugar and fatty foods and carbs the next day. And at the time, I just didn't really know, and I didn't know how to control it. And I didn't really know how to get a grip on everything. I was doing very well for myself financially. I was had invested in medical marijuana, actually, and I was my own boss. But with that freedom and that extra financial came time to party, to overindulge with different foods and beverages that weren't healthy for me. And I got to a point where I had all this money, but you know what? I realized that I was still a broken person. People looking from the outside would have thought that I had it all figured out. I had the freedom. I wasn't rich by any means, but I was my own boss. I made my own schedule. I was traveling wherever I wanted to go. I was eating at nice restaurants. I was doing everything that people would dream to do. But on the inside, I still felt alone. I still didn't feel good inside of my body. And after a while, I was starting to crash. I was starting to burn. And that's when I started to doing research. And in my late 20s, I decided to take a stab at the plant-based diet.
What kind of inspired that, Matt? Because sometimes it's really hard, especially as a guy, for that to be something that seems like appealing. I mean, I hate to say that, but there is a stereotype with that. Like, was there somebody that inspired that, or like a documentary or a person?
Yes. So I'm always very, very big on getting new information. Even when I partied, even I got a bachelor's degree, I always like to learn. And so I had seen the food inks. I had read plenty of articles. I was never against a plant-based diet, but I just didn't know anyone around me who had tried it. I never knew anyone who was a vegetarian or anything. But my fiance now, and then was just my girlfriend, I knew she was pretty much a vegetarian. She ate small amounts of fish here and there, and that was it for the most part. She was just vegetarian, not anything near vegan. And one day I went into the grocery store, and instead of buying regular meat, I just bought a bunch of like the field roast houses and stuff. It was so super, it was really super random.
That's awesome. So just by kind of having her around, and you saw like it was working well for her, just to try it out, basically.
I honestly was just going to try it. It seemed like, she liked to work out. She was into fitness. We both worked out, but I still wasn't like looking at my addictions or my alcohol, but I was trying to make somewhat of a change. I knew something needed to change. And so I decided I went vegetarian for the first 6 months.
Nice. Was that easy for you? Or
it was very, very easy. I found it very easy. Maybe because I am a person with self-control, which might sound strange why I'm on here telling everyone that I was addicted to stuff for a while, but I actually do really, really have a lot of self-control when I really want something. So I thought the vegetarian was easy. And about 6 months in, I started saying, I think I'm going to try to go down this vegan route. I had, we both have a mutual friend, Brendan.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Brendan and Planet Protein, because he's incredible.
Yeah. Great company. Great guy. So I had been seeing him post a lot of things. Me and him used to be friends when he lived back in Flint. So I was kind of like asking him questions, how much better do you feel without the dairy, without stuff like that? And it just seemed like the right route to go. And also, I think I needed another step, The vegetarian was working, but I felt like I needed more like in my healthy body, because I was starting to feel a little bit better in my body, but I wanted more. It's kind of like that's how health works. You feel good when you switch something, and then you really, really want more.
Yeah. Was it hard for you just going from growing up, just, guy, athlete? Would you ever imagine yourself in the version you are today, like super health aware, meditation, yoga, like all of that stuff? I know we're going to get into that in a little bit, but like when you look back, do you think there was ever part of you that could see yourself kind of in that alternate space? Because like it sounds like it's a completely different person.
Literally younger me would call me so many names. There would be so much damage inflicted upon older me. My younger self would make fun of me so badly right
Yeah.
now. It's night and day. I'm a completely different person.
Yeah, then that's amazing. So I mean, like once you started, you did that 6 month, you're ready for that next step. So how did it kind of go from there?
Then I went vegan and felt instant like surge of energy. I don't know if it's most likely by giving up all the unhealthy dairy products. Probably was, that's almost probably as beneficial as giving up, or more beneficial than giving up the meat. People really realize it when they give up the dairy.
For sure.
And I just felt great. From there, I started to become more aware. It's hard to explain to people who haven't been vegan before, but you start to become more aware about everything. It starts with the plate, and then you just see how much animal products everyone's consuming and the factory farm that you've contributed to, from the environmental damages all the way down to just the inhumane practices that go on in the facilities, and you see a couple videos, and it all starts a downward spiral of you looking at everything. I started changing deodorant. I started changing my cleaning products. I started really just wondering what is in everything that I put on or in my body. And it really helped being vegan because you have to start looking at every single label. And then that made me start to look at every single label of like the other stuff, the household products and deodorant and perfume and, cologne that was being used in my household. So it really just started to make me more aware of everything.
Yeah, I love that. And you're 100% right. It really does increase that awareness, every aspect of your life. And for everybody listening, homework for this week is to read every single label, not just the food, but of all the products that you use. Maybe that seems like it's going to take a lot of time. It really doesn't. Like if you're in the shower, read the back of your shampoo bottle or your shower gel. Like just glance at it real quick. And I think you'll be really surprised about like Matt was saying, what you're putting on your body, what is unnecessary things that you're possibly applying that's being absorbed directly to your bloodstream. Like there is a lot that we're taking in that we're not even aware of.
Yeah. As a cheat sheet, I always tell people, if you don't feel like looking at all of your products, the best all-in-one, in my personal opinion, is just a Dr. Bronner's.
Yeah.
If you go with him, you can use it as body wash, as hand soap, dish soap, and it's super sustainable. He's a great guy, and anyone wants to know more about that, he had a great podcast on Rich Roll's podcast.
I haven't listened to that, actually. I love Rich Roll. I haven't listened to that episode though, but I totally will. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him at all. He was just, I've always loved like the messages that he puts on his bottles. Gotcha. And then he's really big into like the whole fair trade thing, where making sure like every worker gets paid and everything's super sustainable. And which just, that goes along the lines with, if people want to be vegan, they should, make sure that if they're being compassionate, like they boast about on social media, you really should be putting your money where your mouth is and buying the products that align with, the same, attributes and stuff that you talk about having. Your product should align.
That's cool. And I do have Dr. Bronner's shower gel right now. So shout out to Dr. Bronner as well. But that's amazing though. So you went vegan, you started to have that awareness, and it's pretty cool once you start to have that awareness, because you start to really figure out in a way, like more about yourself, what you're actually passionate about, not what other people may have kind of been telling you you're passionate about your whole life, right? So what were kind of some of those things for you that you realized more about yourself as you started to have that awareness?
I realized, honestly, that I wasn't very aware that my actions as a person really even had an impact on the world, far as plastic use, driving your car, running your water. That was probably the biggest eye opener for me. And really, I felt ignorant, ignorance is bliss. And I wanted to be a change, though. I didn't want to stay that same person who was unaware of their actions. And that can even go as far as your actions towards another. I started to realize, even my actions towards someone else that I love or that I don't know is going to make that person react in a similar fashion, a similar way to someone else. So if I'm very nice to that person and I give them a nice gesture, they might feel good about themselves and then give someone else a compliment. Right. On the other hand, when I was partying a lot and doing drugs, that lifestyle comes with a lot of like bullshitting and making fun of people and, reciprocating the asshole is what one of my teachers calls it. You have to be the person who stops being the asshole. So even if someone is rude to you or upsets you, you have to try to just be like nice in return so you can break that pattern. And so I became very self-aware of actions like that and how my small little part in the world is actually much bigger than I once thought it was.
I love that. And I love how you described all of that. I think that everyone can relate to that on some level. And I mean, whenever you look back on, because you have done a lot of work with yourself, with, like you said, self-awareness and just developing as a person, like when you look back now on that time of your life where you were dealing with addictions, drugs, alcohol, like, do you know what triggered that? Like when you look back now, like, do you know what made you want to create those patterns?
The patterns of addiction?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a lot of self-discovery about it. And, single parent households tend to do it to a lot of people. My dad was a drug addict, alcoholic, was never around. Also, my mother's sort of a bruised and battered person. She had a kind of a rough childhood as far as just like, my grandpa's was aggressive with them, I should say, so they got beat and she moved out pretty early. So from an emotional standpoint, I pretty much was alone a lot of my childhood. And, I had food, I had shelter, everything was fine. I never went without the basic necessities. But from an emotional standpoint, I didn't really know how to show any emotion. So for most of my life, I had armor up. I almost thought like showing emotion was like weak, And so anytime I would have liked to show emotion, I kept that bottled in. And so I found the outlets through things like alcohol. When I was younger, I didn't really do much drugs because I was playing a lot of sports. So I really just like partied with people on the weekends to start and then drank through college. And then as I got older, it kind of led into more stuff like pills and a lot of the weed and just mixing it all together and really just being a lost person. And I realized, but honestly, I should say this. When I started taking the drugs, it was like the first time that I actually felt love, So you have to realize that the drugs and the alcohol aren't really the problem. They're the solution. There's solutions to the problems that I have never dealt with on my own. I didn't know the healthy ways to deal with the issues that were going on inside of me. No one had ever showed me any of that. So I'm also living in a very, very poor city where plenty of people who are much more broken than me, who had much worse childhoods than I did, it's almost like a norm to party, to do drugs. It's very, very acceptable there. So on a different level, you almost don't seem like you're doing anything that wrong.
Right. Because it is that norm. And do you feel, I'm sure you do feel like it's an advantage now living through that and growing through that as far as just on a mindset level, because I feel like once you've had to overcome like that mindset of you've dealt with poverty, you've dealt with drugs and alcohol, you've dealt with maybe not having the most supportive family, friend setting that you maybe wish you would have had. But just like, I guess the gratitude or just knowing that because you've had to come through that your mindset is just so much maybe stronger than somebody that hasn't really had very many obstacles.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for a single second. Everything I've been through completely makes up the entire person that I am today. And I would be completely different had I not went through that. And I mean, looking back, I had a lot of fun. I really was having fun, but not realizing that I was running from my problems, more than I was actually solving anything. So it was fun. I don't take it back. I do believe it gives me many different perspectives on the world that most people a lot of people have addictions, but a lot of people don't as well. So it gives you definitely a bigger perspective on something. And I can also relate to people. I can relate to any of my clients who have food addictions because I had them as well. Although I had alcohol and substance abuse addictions, I had food addiction at the top of the list as well. So I can definitely relate much better than someone who's never been through any of that.
For sure. And you've had to you had to overcome a lot. Because whenever you look at things like, even like things like law of attraction, right? Or like if you're wanting something better for your life, I'm sure you had to see a lot of unfortunate things to where you understand how powerful it is to really put yourself around the right people that really have the same values as you. Because like, I mean, I think we can both agree, like it is physically impossible for somebody to think that this is where they're stuck in life, like they're never going to have anything great, that those people actually achieve something great just because you can, if that's what your mindset is, right? So I'm sure like you just being able to fully understand that and just knowing people who, that they had that potential but never really took the next steps because they feel so stuck.
Yeah, I looking back at plenty of people from that I hung around, I knew a lot of great, some of the greatest thinkers that I know are battling with addiction issues. So it does take a lot of self-control and a really big want and a really big why to break the cycle on the addiction to become the even greater person. I know plenty of people who drink all the time that are brilliant, brilliant people. Plenty of people who pop pills and smoke weed and hang around and do nothing who are brilliant, brilliant people. But addiction's going to lead you just, it's a repetitive cycle. You can't be ultimately great and you can't change the world by staying in those same patterns because you're ultimately going to be hanging around other people who are addicts and drinking because you don't just want to sit there and do it alone. So you have to change that circle, and changing your environment is crucial. And that's why I'm super, super grateful that my fiance and I moved down to Florida.
That's awesome. And with other aspects of your life that it's affected, because you are really big into like meditation and personal growth now, right? So how has that evolved for you since you decided to really make the changes nutritionally, and then that opened up some just different options for you and just self-awareness? Like how did that lead to just developing as a person into meditation and to really just understanding yourself at a deeper level?
Yes. So my meditation and stuff I started to become really close with somebody in Flint. We really clung on to each other who was really, really big into personal development. And it was right around the same time that I became vegan and was feeling better and was trying to slow down my life. And he really put me onto stuff like podcasts and lots of good books. And that's how I found Rich Roll. And that's how I found Tim Ferriss and everything through him. And I just started to realize the power of meditation, mostly through a lot of Tim Ferriss podcasts. Seemed like almost every single one of his guests was meditating and, bragging about the benefits. And then also Rich Roll had a lot of addicts on his podcast, and they were, pretty much the same thing. It's one of the 12 steps. So if you've been through AA, which I was thankful enough not to do any rehab or anything, I just kind of toughened it up myself, which is probably not the best route, but I'm a pretty hard-headed individual, and that's the route I usually tend to take. So it probably takes me a little bit longer to go to the places that I need to get to. But
hey, but you're there.
But I get there. I usually
Right.
get there. And the meditation is a tricky one. It is my one non-negotiable for the day. Over the gym, over anything else, I make sure I meditate 20 minutes a day. And it was very, very tough at the beginning. It's especially as I was still kind of, partying at the time. I was slowing down, but I was still doing it. And your mind kind of goes crazy when you start. Do you meditate?
I need to do it more regular on a more regular basis, but I do inconsistently, but I do. I need to get on your non-negotiable schedule. So maybe you can message me and keep me more accountable.
Yeah. And well, you know how it is though. You've tried it, obviously. When you start, your brain is just like,
it's rough.
It's everywhere. You didn't even know that your brain could go in that many different directions and places. Yeah. I've read before that the mind is the exhaust pipe, all of them feelings and emotions and thoughts, they're inside of you already. And when you sit down to meditate, everything starts to come up to the exhaust pipe, to the surface. And that's where you can let it go. And I try to just picture the analogy that I usually use, like when that thought pops up, I picture it as it just like being inside of a balloon, and I let it go from my head and it rises into the air. And I breathe in and I say, let go a lot. And I started with some guided meditations. Headspace is a great app.
Headspace is awesome.
Yeah. If you have never done your own meditations, just start there. I paid for that subscription for a while. And that got me probably the most beneficial key aspect of me breaking my addictions was meditation.
That's amazing. So did you find a certain one for you personally work better? After you got a hang of it with guided, do you prefer just to do it yourself, or do you prefer guided?
Yeah, I love to just do it on my own. It kind of gives me a chance to look at only my thoughts, no interruption. I know people, it's all preference, whatever gets you to sit there for 10 to 30 minutes is fine by me. Everyone's going to benefit. But I tend to try to look at a lot of my own thoughts, especially because I've had my own demons in my past. I try to really make peace with myself, a lot of gratitude during my practice. I'm grateful for my body, for my health, especially for what I've been through. I'm grateful for my peace of mind, grateful for my coffee in the morning, you just go down, say a little bit of everything. Everything doesn't have to be so deep,
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that we have mentioned the different types, because like if you start to meditate and maybe a certain form is really rough for you, maybe you hate guided meditation, or maybe you hate meditations where the super calming music's playing, maybe you're not into that at all. Like there's different forms, but it also doesn't have to be anything at all, right? You could just sit there in silence. Like you don't need fancy subscriptions or equipment or anything like that. It's literally just taking the time to sit there and just listen. Because I mean, most people don't listen or don't stop to listen to their bodies or to their thoughts. It's just, you have that, like, let's say you're sitting there waiting for somebody to call you in a room. Your first reaction is, I'm bored in 2 seconds. Like, let me get on Instagram. Like, we don't even think about those things anymore. It's just like built in that we have to constantly our mind is just like going and going and going, which is not how we're designed.
It's a stressor. It's a huge stressor. I love to take in information, but you have to have a break. You have to sit with yourself for a while. And for those listening, just sitting there is the work. If you can sit there, you're one half the battle, because not only does your mind want to move, your body wants to move. It's become so adapted to being so busy and taking in all of that information, from television to phones to work, email. It's so used to taking on information and moving that it doesn't want to sit there. But at the same time, are you in control of your mind, or does your mind control you? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And remembering, like, there's no perfection. Like if you sit there for 10 minutes and your mind doesn't stop, like that's not a failed meditation. That's just like, it's progress. And I think people are so like caught into this, it has to be perfect mentality, and it's not about that at all.
My mind almost never is that peaceful, honestly.
Right.
I've been doing it for a couple of years at least. Yeah. Sometimes there was a point where I was meditating an hour a day, and
wow,
the stupid stuff that my mind comes up with from high school and childhood and whatever, you know what I mean? It doesn't turn off.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I've never meditated for an hour. I would say like 20 minutes is probably my max. Like, have you noticed a huge difference with that? Or do you just do that as needed? Or maybe you're just sitting there and you just let it keep rolling? Like, what have you noticed with those longer sessions?
I was breaking it up into a couple times a day. So I was doing multiple sessions, but I do notice that I can cut out a lot more chatter if I step it up to 30 minutes instead of 20. It's almost like the first 20 is like, your warm up, and everything's still kind of going crazy. And then there's a point where you just really will start to feel peaceful.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that. And like, how have you really, I guess, how has it amplified just your self-love overall? Because that's obviously been something that you've really had to learn about yourself and overcome just growing up. But just, I guess, how has taking the time to listen to your thoughts, to your body, how much has it really amplified that self-love, so you don't really feel like you need to have all the other addiction issues? Just being okay with your own thoughts, your body, and just self-love overall.
It gives you a great deal of self-awareness, especially over your thoughts, so that everyone has negative thoughts. Let's be clear about that. That's part of the human condition. Negative thoughts come more so than positive thoughts, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean,
for sure,
it lets you realize that you really aren't your thoughts, and you have the ability to switch those thoughts. So let's give an example. I'm driving down the street. Car cuts me off, honks, yells, whatever. My general reaction is to say 10 cuss words, flip them off, and honk back.
Yeah.
Since I've started.
And you're in Florida, so let's not lie. This happens a lot.
A lot, every day in Tampa. And so now, as a meditator, as someone who's compassionate, it's more of a giggle, a laugh, and just let them keep going, because me getting amped up and becoming just as infuriated as them doesn't help either of us. And it's only the the incident's going to last 10 seconds, but the fury and the rage you feel is going to kind of carry on with you for a couple hours. And then also another example is when something used to happen to me. I don't know if everyone suffers from this or if I just am a big, big overthinker. I used to overthink every single situation. I would replay it in my head a million times, and then I would think about what I was going to say back to this person when I spoke to them, or, I would have everything rehearsed in my head. It was almost like a, theatrical play. Like I was rehearsing for something in my head over and over and over and over. Then half the time you don't even say it to the person, but it's,
Right.
or you do, and it's really well thought out, but one or the other, that literally never happens to me anymore. I can let stuff go so fast that with that will bring the peace, because you can start to, and also you can let go of the negative thoughts very, very fast and replace it with a positive one. And just thinking positive thoughts and not holding on to stuff is just going to bring a lot more peace.
I love that. No, and that was an awesome example. And no, that's amazing. And kind of off topic, Matt, a little bit. But do you still have family in Flint at all?
Yeah, they're most of them are there pretty much.
How has it been with the water situation? I just think I think it's awful, and it's nice. It's super encouraging to see people that have influence, like Jaden Smith. I don't know if he's actually doing much over there, just talking about it. I'm pretty sure he is. But like, how has that situation been? And have you seen any solutions for water treatment or anything like that?
So I lived there for a few years of it. So I still was there when I had bought a house. So I lived through it. I was picking up the bottled water, which is traumatizing, thinking about the plastic waste that we were picking up 10 and 20 cases at a time. You had to cook with it. Some people were showering with it.
I'm about to say, like, I wouldn't shower. I mean, I guess if you live there, you have
they
to.
told us the showers were safe, so I showered in it for a couple of years. Knowing what I know now, would have never stepped foot in that shower, because I know that my skin is a digestive organ. But at the time, I didn't know as much. So I did shower in it. I did wash my clothes in it. But either way, if you think about just like cooking pasta or something, you're gonna use 10 bottles of water probably just to boil some pasta.
Yeah.
So there's the plastic use, and then all of that goes into it as well. And they kept saying it was fine. And we knew it wasn't. We knew the Flint River was gross that they had switched over to. We knew people's water was brown, yellow, whatever color. And then they tried to clean it up, and they got it to go back to being clear water, but it just like smelled like chlorine or whatever else they were putting in there. Like it was like, okay, yeah, you made it clear instead of brown, but it smells awful. And the biggest issue concerning it is that, once they got called out and it was a crisis and they decided to start digging up some pipes, Michigan's really, really cold a lot of the year. So you can dig up as many as you possibly can while it's warm. As soon as that ground freezes, everything's on hold. So that's another issue that most people who haven't been there wouldn't know. There, you would, somewhere like Florida, we could dig everything up 24/7, nighttime, everything. It gets really, really cold there during the night, during a lot of the year, and it freezes for part of the year. So they have a weather challenge there as well. Yeah.
No, I mean, have you seen, just by hearing from your family now, I mean, it's still a problem, right? So
yeah, I had still owned my house and was renting it out when I first moved to Tampa a couple of years ago. And right before I sold it last summer, they just fixed the pipes on my house. So they are doing some digging, but it's very slow rate. Still doesn't seem like the nation's putting it at the forefront of, after the Time magazine, all the exposure, it's still just going at whatever pace they feel like. So, and then you get the other issue of just the distrust in general. So you can fix my pipes. I'm still kind of scared of tap water after a 5-year scare,
Right. It's scary without a chemical spill, honestly, for a lot of just regular non-filtered water.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think very, very differently about a lot of water. That crisis also changed me a lot.
Man, no, it's insane. I grew up in West Virginia, and I still have like all of our family is still there, but they had a chemical spill. It was a few years ago, I think, but and it got into the water supply, and like literally like a week later, they told them it was good. It was good to go. I'm like, there is no way that it's good to go. Yeah, it's clear, but it's physically impossible that it's good to go. And I'm just like, that kind of situation there. And especially in Flint, like it scares me for the people because you might not be seeing anything right now, but I guarantee you're going to see some just increases in certain health issues soon, or in the future. So that's super concerning.
It's alarming for everyone. It's very, very alarming for the youth. I've seen the damages that it's done to some of the children there, and the way that their brain is still developing that may never reverse. Some of the adults can probably get rid of it, chelation therapy, or however they decide to get it out of their body, might go back to normal within a little while. But with a developing brain, I'm pretty scared for the next generation who lived through that.
Man, yeah, it's awful. And hopefully solutions can happen faster. Hopefully that does happen because it's awful. And and then Matt, to kind of jump into what you're working on now, like I'm excited for you because you just started your podcast not too long ago, the Integrative Thoughts Podcast. So I want to hear, first off, what inspired the podcast just to start and how the process has been for you so far.
Yeah, so it starts because I just like to talk mostly. And I like to learn from people. And I listen to lots and lots of podcasts, and it seemed like a cool platform to help me as I start this health coaching journey. I'm also on my personal training now, and then I'm going to actually build upon my health coaching and get a better certificate after I'm done with my personal training. So I'm just going to keep continuing with the learning and starting the business there with that. So I just figured that if I got enough people on my show who I respected and I could learn from, you automatically win because you're learning.
Yeah.
And it also gives me a platform where I can be very transparent with people. No fluff, nothing like that. Just completely be me. And from a health coaching standpoint, people like that. They like to give money to someone that they truly trust. And so by doing that, I didn't really realize that I was going to absolutely fall in love with it. It's been like my favorite creative thing that I've ever done. So, which is cool. So,
yeah.
And it was a learning curve. I didn't know anything about editing. I didn't know what I would sound like. My first interviews sound awful, even though people tend to tell me they like them. You're your own biggest critic. So
exactly.
When I listen to them, I'm like, God, those are awful. But I put them out anyways because I would like to see my growth and be able to everyone else to really realize that I'm taking it pretty serious. And hopefully by interview 200 like yours, I'll be doing something cool.
Oh, man. Well, you're definitely going to do it, and you're doing an amazing job. And yeah, it only gets more fun. And you were talking about just the people you get to meet. And it's really incredible because you'll meet more people in the next few years than you've ever met in your life. And not only just meeting people, you're meeting like-minded people. You're meeting people that want to learn. And it's super rewarding. And yeah, it's the best thing ever. So definitely stay consistent with it because you're doing the right stuff. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's been great. I could have never guessed, just in my little short amount of time, I've already linked up with people who have changed me drastically. It's pretty crazy. I could have never guessed how open and how willing people actually are to be on your show.
Oh, yeah. Like people are more accessible than what you think they are. I think that's been a huge takeaway for myself. Like we think certain people are super hard to reach, and really they're not. People want to share their stories. They want to share what they're passionate about. And, if you give them a platform to do that, like, there you go. Like it's really that easy.
Yeah. It's, we actually are blessed enough to have this platform because it's mutually beneficial, right? I get to learn, I get to introduce you to my audience. You get to promote your product and you get to promote your message. And from there, everything is, it's mutually beneficial. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. And you were talking about just how rewarding it's been for you already. What do you think maybe some of the takeaways that you've had so far, maybe something that you've taken away from a guest on a personal level that's really moved you or changed you? Like, is there anything that you can think of as an example right off?
I had an episode with someone who overcame autoimmune disease, and she probably had the roughest time out of anyone that I had interviewed. She seemed pretty much stuck on the couch for years, and doctors were telling her basically, this is it. You're going to be on steroids forever, and you're going to be inflamed, and you're going to have gut issues. And that's it. And she sought out different naturopaths and, functional medicine style people. And over the next few years, she really got healed. And I really learned from her about it's all about mindset and not giving up. Your body is able to overcome a lot more than what you think it is. We all are so much more capable than what we really capable of stuff that we don't believe that we are. It's the limiting beliefs are what keep us down. They keep us enslaved. They keep us at that job. They keep us unhealthy. You are capable of it. The information is out there. You have to just believe in yourself and be willing to go out of your way and seek out the information as well and find the help.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And guys, if you're listening, please go subscribe to his podcast, the Integrative Thoughts Podcast. Also, give him a 5-star review, write a review, because it really helps a lot for people to find the podcast, for them to, if they're searching through wellness podcasts, it makes it more accessible so they can see it and subscribe. So it really means a lot. So go subscribe, give him a great review, and check it out, because he's doing an amazing job. And I'll put the link in the show notes, Matt. That way people can just click, and that's a whole lot easier for them to find you as well.
Yes, thank you. Just so people know, it's not just a health coaching thing. Although I talk to some doctors. It's meditation. I have a relationship segment with my fiance on there where we talk about different emotional and relationship advice. And, I speak about yoga and meditation on a lot of them. So I don't really have a niche. It's kind of just whatever I'm interested in and that I found helpful in my personal development. It is my platform to share there. And if anyone wants to health coaching by me, someone to hold you accountable. I'm more of a life coach, really, because I'll try to get on you about your meditation and
what you're gonna do for me anyways, right? You're gonna
right.
Message. Yeah,
I don't really stick to just health coaching. If I'm helping anyone, I try to look at everything. So I try.
It's a whole picture, right?
Yeah, it's a whole. If you're if you know anything about health, it boils down to everything. Is your job stressful? Are you meditating? Are you taking time to rest? Are you working out too much? So you got to look at the whole picture. So I try to be a little bit more well-rounded. So most people would probably call it a life coach, but you can find me at Integrative Matt on Instagram or Twitter. I always respond to DMs, so feel free to get a hold of me. Tell me you like the show with me and Dr. Casey, or if you want a session with me, feel free to ask. I can always, or a few tips. I'm here for free tips as well. I'm just trying to make the world a healthier place.
Awesome. I love it. And Matt, I'll put your social media links in the show notes as well. So guys, go give him an ad. And Matt, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that's been your biggest takeaway on your wellness journey so far. But if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Listen more. Don't always pay attention to all of that dialogue that's going on in your head. A lot of times when we're speaking to others in conversation, we are just waiting for a chance to say what we need to say, what we need to get off of our chest. When a lot of times I find that when I'm talking to people that I had very, very poor listening skills for most of my life. And with better listening skills comes great conversation, comes great networking. People feel like they can talk to you. It just opened up a whole host of different doors and really gave me some control over the conversation. And I think that a lot of people in the world are stressed, over caffeinated, hyped up, and they really, really aren't listening much. So I think they should listen a little bit more.
I love it. No, that's perfect, Matt. And just thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you and excited for people to go check out your podcast as well. I just love all the work you're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Matt. He's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give him a follow on social media to keep up with everything that he's been working on. You can find his social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drcaseyjohnson.com. That's DrKaseyJohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Matt's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Matt, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.